I'ma just be honest with y'all out front on this one. I've never really been a fan of Super Sentai. I know. To some people in the community, this is a sin. Anime and tokusatsu productions have always had close ties because of their lineage. But it's just kinda never been for me. I never watched any Super Sentai shows as a kid, and when I tried to watch them as I got older, I never really could get into them. The genre encompasses many iconic shows, but they aren't exactly known for having the most cinematic fight scenes or award-winning dialogue. The biggest thing, though, is just that the genre is heavily geared towards kids, especially in the structure and themes of the story. One of the major reoccurring elements in Super Sentai shows that fans love to emphasize is just how virtuous the heroes often are. They place the lives of those around them above all else and never ask for anything in return. Even though they're often given these powers basically out of nowhere without ever asking for them, they're willing to sacrifice everything to fulfill the responsibility they see as inherent with these new powers. And as beautiful as that truly is, there ain't no way in hell that a bunch of random people off the street being given superpowers isn't gonna lead to all manner of debauchery. Like, come on. I'm not saying that I would use these powers for personal gain, but... And it's not like this is some revolutionary line of thought, though many of mine are. This idea of the corruption that superhuman powers would have on your psyche has been popular in superhero stories for some time now, but I'd never really seen it given much focus in Super Sentai specifically. That is, until recently. Go-Go Loser Ranger, which is a fucking fantastic name by the way, recontextualizes the core concepts that make up the framework of the Super Sentai genre by deconstructing those elements down to their individual parts and creating new connections between them based on different interpretations of those pieces which show them in a new light, and then creating a world that logically follows the new interpretations of those key elements.
Huh?
And I know that multiple of those words had more than 5 letters in them, meaning even with the visual aid, I definitely lost a couple of you. So let me put it like this. If the most perfect person on Earth ended up with supernatural powers, then maybe they would use them purely for good. But what if instead it was just some regular dude? Or what if one of the people who got those powers was some brain-rotted kick streamer? We've all seen how crazy some people can get with just a little bit of fame and how far some people are willing to go for just a little bit of cash. Now just imagine for a second the potential for money and influence that exists when your starting point isn't just some rando in your room with a webcam, but instead is as a super-powered hero to the people. Do you really think the same people terrorizing the public for a $5 dono are really going to rise to the occasion when presented with that sort of power? Or are they going to be showing up to podcast and doing TikTok dances by day in the public eye while committing all sorts of heinous acts at night and behind the scenes? Granted, I can't actually think of any acts that I would consider more heinous than TikToking, but you know what I'm getting at. How this all looks in the world of Loser Ranger is that sometime before the story takes place, an invasion of Earth occurred, consisting of extremely powerful boss monsters and their shape-shifting foot soldiers, which resulted in the loss of many human lives. And the only force that was capable of stopping them was that of the Dragon Keepers, the most powerful of the Rangers, wielding mythical weapons called the Divine Artifacts, which allow them to stand against the attack and defeat all of the boss monsters, stopping the invasion in its tracks. All that remains now are the droves of foot soldiers that served those now exterminated boss monsters, who continue to regularly attempt to take over the planet, only to be repelled by the Rangers every time. Or at least that's the story that's being sold to the public. In reality, the Dragon Keepers had defeated the monsters so thoroughly that they could easily have wiped out every single foot soldier if they wanted to, and ended the invasion entirely. But instead, they chose to keep them alive. These remnants are referred to as the Dusters, and are essentially no more than slaves to the Dragon Keepers at this point, forced to humiliate themselves over and over again by attacking the Earth in a controlled manner in a stadium, and be beaten senseless by the Keepers in front of a crowd of cheering humans celebrating their defeat. For the Keepers, on top of these events making money for them directly with tickets and alike, they also let the Dragon Keepers and the rest of the Rangers to continue to represent themselves as the heroes of the people, and the only reason that the Earth is still safe. This gives them access to unprecedented fame, riches, respect, and basically makes them untouchable because of this. On top of the way they treat the remaining Dusters, the Rangers can also just be conceited assholes. They fully recognize their position of great power, but see the aspect of great responsibility to be an optional nuisance at best. They see themselves as strictly better than not only the monsters, but anyone who's not a ranger, and even any ranger who is of a lower status than their own. And the Dusters have more or less just accepted this life. They know they can't fight the Dragon Keepers, let alone any other ranger head on, and the Keepers have made it very clear to the Dusters that they are only alive to serve the Keepers, and that any act of rebellion would be answered for in blood.
その時は容赦なく殺す。幹部どもと同じようにな。
So they kinda just gave up. Let the Rangers beat the ever-loving shit out of them every Tuesday, and hope that maybe someday the boss monsters will return and save them. Or that the Rangers will eventually get bored and just leave them alone. That is, except for the one, the only, Fighter D. Maybe his name isn't exactly as cool as the Dragon Keepers and their divine artifacts. And maybe he's not as strong as them either. And maybe he doesn't really have any friends. And maybe I forgot where I was going with this. But the point is that Fighter D Monster is basically the only Duster with any balls. Instead of just accepting his fate as some random, no-name Super Sentai villain getting bodied week after week after week like the rest of the Dusters, he decides to try and live up to his title as a fighter and show them his D. Using his shape-shifting powers, he sneaks out of the Duster base and disguises himself as a low-level wannabe ranger to start working his way into the world of the Rangers with the goal of taking them out from the inside. D is still kinda just a rando foot soldier at the end of the day though. In a straight-up fight, he would be no match for a standard ranger, let alone one of the Dragon Keepers. Thus, a lot of the show is spent with him trying to find whatever ways he can to set himself up for success against the Keepers. That could be trying to weaken the Keepers directly or indirectly somehow, gaining knowledge on how to fight the Keepers, or, most importantly, gaining allies to help him in his fight. Cause even outside of the ranks of the Dusters, the Keepers have made more than a few enemies for themselves through their actions. But while the Keepers might not be the best guys on Earth, that doesn't mean that D is a hero either. Maybe you wouldn't call him a villain, but at the very least he would qualify as an anti-hero. Unlike a lot of anti-heroes in anime though, where they are actually just a great guy who's completely in the right and a total saint, but just happens to be a little bit mean sometimes. D actually fits the role. D hates humans. D would be happy to see every human dead, not just the Rangers. And his motivation for wanting to kill the Keepers leans much more towards just wanting revenge than it does towards wanting to improve the world via their deaths or some shit like that. And like, yeah, the Dragon Keepers are assholes, but they also did save the planet. The Rangers also are the only ones capable of stopping the monsters if they actually did return again in earnest. And on top of fighting the monsters, the Rangers also do stuff like crime fighting. Even if they're not doing any of this out of the kindness of their heart, it's hard to argue that any of these things are not a net positive. So, who do you root for? The asshole heroes who save the day, but only for selfish reasons? Or the underdog fighting for the freedom of his people who uses underhanded tactics and also wants you specifically dead. This dynamic is one of my favorite parts of the story. It adds an additional layer of intrigue and tension to every interaction between D and the Keepers, on top of how intense these interactions already are. Cause you know that if D slips up and gets found out early, that the Keepers could crush his skull in their hands without breaking a sweat. And then this is added upon as we meet more of the Rangers who serve under these Keepers. D interacts with a lot of different Rangers with a huge range of personalities and perspective on both the Keepers and the monsters. And with every person that D interacts with, he has to try and discern where they fit into his plans. Some Rangers are just going to be obstacles to overcome or avoid. Others are assets to utilize, whether that be knowingly or not to them. My wife Yumiko is a great example of this. She has her own personal issues with the Keepers, so she's willing to ally with D. But instead of simply helping D execute his plans, it's much more accurate to say that they're both just using each other to get what they want. She is fully in her gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss era and would kill D without a second thought if he went against her. But she also knows that D can be a great asset for her. And it's not like D is just going to let Yumiko have her way with him either. Not that I would have any complaints myself. So they're both willing to work together towards their shared interests. All the while, both of them are trying to be the one that gets more out of their partnership than the other. The Keepers themselves have probably been the characters that I've mentioned the most throughout this video thus far, and for good reason. Their position as the ever-present driving force of the plot is most of what we see from them, since their actual screen time is quite limited. But they are also very interesting characters onto themselves. While we don't really know too much about any of the Rangers currently, we do know that D is very much justified in being terrified of them. The Red Keeper is so charismatic and friendly, the perfect hero in the eyes of the public. But he has no issue bashing someone's skull in if they even nudge him a little bit in the wrong way, and won't feel the slightest bit of remorse for doing so. The Pink Keeper is vain and self-centered, the Blue Keeper seems cruel and uncaring, the Yellow Keeper comes off as just straight unstable, and with the Green Keeper it's impossible to pinpoint what's going on inside of his head. Each of them, along with their second-in-commands, all have unique character traits and dynamics that clearly set them apart from each other, despite the minimal screen time. Honestly, every single time we get to see the Keepers up close, it's a highlight. They have this air around them of power and menace that really sells them as the big bad of the show. And learning more about the Dragon Keepers and the corruption that seemingly comes along with the job is one of the things I'm most anticipating going forward. And it's hard to talk on a lot of the other characters without going deep into spoilers, but really the whole cast turned out a lot better than I expected. The one concern that I had going into this story though was that of its tone. We've gotten other shows, mostly in other mediums, that have tackled similar ideas to what we're getting here with Loser Ranger. And one of the common through points with the best of them is just how dark they are willing to get. When trying to showcase the corrupt, evil, unrepresented story of how these powers would affect the world and those within it, you really don't want to have to shy away from anything. Because if you're not able to show these elements to your audience and engage in that darker side of the world, then it will lessen the impact and believability of your villains and of the world as a whole. And honestly, this is the point that I've seen most people who didn't vibe with the show take issue on. The main culprit being a scene from early on when D basically has the perfect opportunity for his very own Huey and translucent moment. But the story just doesn't commit. And honestly, yeah, I get it. It really does suck that they didn't. That scene kind of hangs over a lot of the show, even for myself. I don't think there's really a great reason for why they didn't pull the trigger in that moment. But it definitely leaves you feeling like they might get gun shy again the next time that something like that comes around. But it is also not like this show is on some Weenie Hut Jr. bullshit all the time. It's got plenty of darker scenes and elements in it, from death to cults and oppression and much more. I just really think that if they had pushed it just a little bit further in some key scenes, that it really would have elevated this story to another level. If the last 15 minutes of me yapping didn't make it clear though, I strongly believe this show is 100% worth the watch. And while making comparisons to other stories makes sense for sure, especially given the clear inspiration that was taken when creating many elements of this story, I still think that Loser Ranger easily stands on its own 2 feet. So if you did enjoy any of those other series, are a fan of Super Sentai, or just found any of what I've tried selling you today interesting, then definitely give Go-Go Loser Ranger a shot. And make sure you don't forget to give this video a like and to subscribe to the channel on your way out. Because I'm hoping that more writers will now take inspiration from Loser Ranger and bring us more series playing in this space going forward. And you can bet your ass that I will be talking about them here when they do. And trust me, you're not going to want to miss out. Well, with that, I have officially returned from my hibernation period and am now ready to spread my mind virus once again. So you will be seeing me again very soon. But that's all I've got for y'all today. So I will see you all next time when I talk more about anime and get way too into it. Peace.